A lot of my time, talent, and treasures are divided in directions, as it should be as a married person. But as a single person, here Paul is saying that you can serve the Lord in an undivided way. Number two, second myth that that I wanted to talk about today is singleness requires a special calling. That's a myth. Singleness requires a special calling. And to be honest with you, I just wanted to confess, I used to believe in this myth. So how do I explain this? So those of you who know me, you know that I enjoy watching superhero movies. I don't care if it's Marvel superheroes or DC movie superheroes or Dark Horse superheroes. I just enjoy superhero movies. And there's a lot to choose from, especially today. I mean, there's usually like a sequel and another sequel and then prequel, and then, they spin off into these television shows and so forth. And we're all fascinated by people who can have special abilities, these superheroes that have been given special abilities to do some heroic things. Those of us in the church that have bought into the lie that singleness is bad, that the only way that you can imagine someone being single for the rest of their life, is to have some kind of God-given superhero power that we call the gift of singleness. And again, I used to believe in this myth, but that's just not true. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, look with me, go up a few verses to verse 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, Paul says, "Yet I wish all men were even as I myself am. However, each man has his own gifts from God, one in this manner and another in that manner." Paul here is not talking about the gift of singleness as some kind of superpower, just as the gift of marriage is not some kind of superpower that some people have and some people don't. I know some single people, single guys and gals, that have put themselves in very unhealthy, unbiblical relationships on the idea that believing some erroneous thinking that they think, well, I just don't have this special gift of singleness. And so they put themselves in unbiblical situations. What Paul is talking about here when he talks about his own gifts from God, he's not talking about a superpower, about being single or about being married. He's talking about the state of being single itself. The gift of singleness is the gift of being single. Just as the gift of marriage is the gift of being married. The gift is the state itself. And all of God's gifts are good. Too many single people hate being single, which leads them to not appreciating the gift of singleness that God has blessed them with, which leads to being frustrated and disappointed. Just as there are many married people that I know that hate being married to their spouse, which leads to them not appreciating the gift that God has blessed them with, which leads them to being frustrated and disappointed. Ultimately, it's not an issue of being married or being single, because either way, you get to experience the gift of God, the goodness of God, and all of God's gifts are good. But we need to learn to appreciate the gifts that God has given us, the gift that He has given you as being single, the gift that He has given you of being married. It's not wrong to pray for a spouse if you're single, but it is wrong and even unhealthy to think that the key to God blessing me is by making me complete is by being married. That's wrong and even unhealthy to think that my marriage status is going to complete me. Your marriage status doesn't complete you. Only Christ can do that. So myth number 1 is singleness is bad. Myth number 2, singleness is some kind of superpower or special kind of calling. Myth number 3 is singleness must be very isolating and lacks intimacy. Singleness must be very isolating and lacks intimacy. This is a very dangerous myth. In our world today, sex and intimacy are typically the same thing. When you hear the word intimacy, in our world today, we tend to think sexual. But research shows that you can have a lot of sex and not have any intimacy. Also, you can experience a lot of intimacy that has nothing to do with sex. I want to show you a picture here. This is a picture of last time I was in Corinth, and here is a picture of this kind of a tablet that we see of a person by the name of Erastus. Erastus was only mentioned once in the Bible, and it's Romans chapter 16, verse 23. It says that Gaius, Paul is saying here, Gaius, my host, and the host of the whole church, greet you. Erastus, who is the city director of public works, and our brother, Quartus, sends you their greeting. And here, I want to take a picture of this because this is a really cool example of something that's archaeological evidence of things that are in the Bible. This is archaeological proof of things that we see in the Bible. And so in Romans chapter 16, verse 23, here we see the name Erastus, and here we see an artifact that was discovered not that long ago in the city of Corinth. Anyway, I'm showing this to you. The reason I'm showing this to you is when you look at Romans chapter 16, Romans chapter 16 is a very interesting chapter because it lists all of these all of these friends of Paul that he wants to acknowledge. All of these individuals that we never see again in the Bible, but yet Paul just lists them out. And there's a whole bunch of them in Romans chapter 16 that he wants to thank and wants to acknowledge. And I share that with you because we need to understand Paul, when he's doing his ministry, was not a lone ranger, not living in isolation. He had deep, intimate relationships with people that were not sexual. He had deep friendships. Deep friendships. Another verse I wanted to take a look at, and this is one of those verses in the Bible that I wouldn't believe it in the Bible unless I actually saw it in the Bible. And so look with me in John chapter 15. John chapter 15 is just one of those verses that it's like, what? That's in the Bible? No. Well, it actually is in the Bible. John chapter 15, verse 15, here Jesus says, no longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Here, Jesus Christ calls us friends. But what is a friend? In Jesus' definition, in the Bible's definition, what is a friend? Does Jesus say, I call you friends for I have you as Facebook friends? No, it doesn't say that. Friendship, what is friendship in the Bible? Instagram followers? No. What Jesus says here is a friend for all the things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. This is what a friend is, what Jesus is saying here. A friend is someone that you let in to your life. A friend is someone that you share your heart to. Jesus says, for the things that I have heard from my Father, I want to share, I want to make known to you. This is intimacy. Friendship is true intimacy, biblical friendship, not Facebook friends, not WeChat friends, not Instagram followers. True biblical friendship is real intimacy. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 1, Paul says, do not sharply rebuke an older man, but rather appeal to him as a father, to the younger man as brothers, the older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters in all purity.